Alrighty, folks, welcome to our college football Week 8 video here today for the 2024 season. My name is Brock Page. I've been dishing out free sports picks on YouTube since 2016. We're now hitting at 62% in our last 30 college football tier package plays on my premium site. And if you sign up for that membership, you're going to get access to that package every single day for the next 30 days. You'll get access to 3 premium college football selections each week for the next 30 days. And as an added bonus, you're also going to get access to all of my cheaper memberships during that time frame, absolutely free. They're going to be included with your membership. Now, folks, we're also 5-0 with a push in our last 6 NFL tier membership plays as well. And that package is included with your college football tier membership. And with that, folks, let's go ahead and dive into some free content. I'll tell you what, I got to be honest with you, I went real heavy with the notes this week, a little bit too heavy. This is going to be a really long show, so I'll probably not go as in-depth maybe next week, but enjoy the show, guys, because we're going to be here for a while. Get a pen and paper because I got a lot of information for you. We're going to start off with Troy taking on South Alabama, 7:30 Tuesday night. SALA's minus 12.5, totals 56 and a hook. 1 point move towards South Alabama in this one. Open 11.5 up to 12.5. Both schools are 2-4 against the point spread on the year. Troy's 1-5 straight up. SALA 2-4 straight up. SALA did defeat the likes of Appalachian State and Northwestern State this season. They've also had little problems running the football this year. These guys are gaining over 5.9 yards per carry. They're 8th in the country in that particular category. And because of that, they are in the top 20 in total yards per game. Fluff Bothwell, remember that name. He's got over 400 yards on the ground this season. 7.4 yards per rush he's averaging, plus just the best name in college football. Meanwhile, receiving-wise, Jamal Pritchett, he has 532 yards receiving along with 6 scores. And they're facing a Troy team on the other side who's got just 1 win on the season. That was against Florida A&M. And I'll tell you what, this Troy defense has been a bit of a liability on these guys. They're 114th in yards allowed per rush. And I'll tell you what, if the Jags want to throw it, well, I think they can throw it against Troy because the Trojans are letting their opponents complete 71% of their passes against them. That puts them in the bottom 5 in the country in that particular category. But I tell you what, it ain't just defense that's hurting these guys. The Trojans are 110th in total yards per contest. Now, injury-wise, Russ, Crowder, and Lewis are out for Troy. And they saw overs recently against the likes of Iowa and Nevada. Now, South Alabama on the other side saw overs recently against the likes of Appalachian State and Northwestern State. Give me South Alabama minus 12.5, over 56 and a hook. Next game, Kennesaw State taking on Middle Tennessee. 8 o'clock Tuesday night at Johnny Red Floyd Stadium. Middle Tennessee's minus 10 at home, totals 51. Middle Tennessee 1-5 straight up, 1-5 against the point spread. Kennesaw State winless on the year, 1-4 against the number. Now the mighty Kennesaw State Owls, they did cover the number against the likes of Texas San Antonio earlier in the opener this year. And they were competitive in the first half last week against Jacksonville State. So they're not completely helpless. And I'll tell you what, even though there's really not much these guys do well on offense, they've done a nice job protecting the quarterback. They're allowing just 1.2 sacks a game. And, if they're going to have success moving the football, chances are they can do it against Middle Tennessee. The Blue Raiders have the worst passing defense in college football. They're allowing 321 yards a game through the air. That is worst in Division I. Opposing quarterbacks are also completing 73% of their throws against them. That also puts them in the bottom 3 in that category. The Blue Raiders are currently allowing 41 points a game on average. They've given up 45 points or more in 4 out of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, on the offensive end, Middle Tennessee's gaining just 2.8 yards per rush on the ground, bottom 10 in fumbles. Now, Middle Tennessee saw 3 out of their last 4 get over the total. Kennesaw State saw an over against Jacksonville State in their most recent game. Give me Kennesaw State plus 10, keeping that one close, over 51. Next matchup, Louisiana Tech taking on New Mexico State. 9 o'clock Eastern kickoff Tuesday night. Louisiana Tech's minus 10.5, totals 50 and a hook. La Tech 2-3 straight up, 3-2 against the point spread. New Mexico State 1-5 straight up, 1-5 against the number. The Aggies are scoring only 18 points a game, 115th in sacks allowed on the quarterback. And as bad as the teams are we just reviewed, well, New Mexico State might just have the worst quarterbacking in the game. They're currently dead last in the nation in quarterback rating. No real surprise here. They're completing just 41% of their throws. They're dead last in yards per pass attempt. Now, when it comes to defensive play, well, they've been equally as pitiful. The Aggies are in the bottom 10 in points allowed. They give up 250 a game just on the ground. That's second worst in Division I. They're going to face a Louisiana Tech team who covered in 3 out of their last 5. Covers against the likes of Middle Tennessee, NC State, and Nicholls State. And I'll tell you, this Bulldog defense, they can be tough. They're 11th in yards per rush, top 25 in total yards per game. Zach Zimmo, he's leading the defense in tackles. Colby Shields has 31 tackles himself. And 2 out of La Tech's last 3 games fell under the total. New Mexico State saw unders against the likes of Sam Houston, Liberty, and Southeast Missouri State. Give me Louisiana Tech minus 10.5, under 50 and a hook. Next game, Western Kentucky, Sam Houston State, 7 o'clock Wednesday night. Sam Houston minus 3.5, total 56. 1 point move toward the Bearcats in this one, open 2.5. Sam Houston 5-1 straight up, 5-1 against the point spread. Western Kentucky 4-1 straight up, 5-1 against the number. And even though the Hilltoppers have looked pretty good this season, they really haven't run the ball all that well. They're 116th in yards per game on the ground. They're also rushing for just 3.6 yards a carry. That puts them in the bottom 20 in that particular category as well. And as good as the Hilltoppers have thrown it, they have run into some turnover problems. They're 107th in interceptions per game. And they're facing a Bearcat defense who's actually allowed 21 points or less in 3 out of their last 4. And on offense, you know, these guys just want to jam it down your gullet. This team runs for 229 yards a game. That's 12th in the nation. Aside from winning their last 4 straight, they successfully cover the point spread in each and every one of those victories. Now, injury-wise, Armstead is out for Sam Houston. When it comes to the total, the Bearcats saw their last 2 straight get over the total. Western Kentucky saw overs against the likes of UTEP and Middle Tennessee recently. Give me Sam Houston minus 3.5, over 56. Next game, Florida International, UTEP, 9 o'clock Wednesday night. FIU's minus 5.5, totals 49. The Panthers are 2-4 straight up, 4-2 against the point spread. UTEP, winless on the season, still looking for their first W, just 1-5 against the number. UTEP's lost by double digits in all of their contests except for one. That was actually a 3-point loss to Southern Utah in that game. And, you know, to be fair, I really just don't know where to start with this team. Defensively, they rarely force turnovers. They're currently second to last in interceptions, bottom 15 in fumbles. When it comes to stopping the run, well, they just don't do it. They're allowing over 234 yards a game on the ground. That puts them in the bottom 5 in that particular category. Now, offensively, well, not much better. They're averaging only 16 points a game, bottom 10 in rushing. And they're facing a Florida International squad who actually held Louisiana Tech to 10 points and Central Michigan to just 16 points. And this Panther secondary is 31st in the country in defensive quarterback rate. Travion Barnes, he leads the D in tackles and sacks. He also has a fumble recovery and a pick six. C.J. Christian, 46 tackles from that secondary. FIU saw 3 out of their last 5 get over the line. UTEP saw overs against Western Kentucky and Sam Houston. Give me FIU minus 5.5, over 49. Next game, Georgia State, Marshall, 7 o'clock Thursday night. Marshall's minus 9, totals 52. Half a point move toward Marshall in this one. The Herd's 3-3 straight up, perfect against the point spread. Georgia State 2-3 straight up, 1-4 against the number. As bad as the Panthers have been, well, they did beat Vanderbilt just a few weeks ago. It's definitely a team who can throw the football. These guys are in the top 35 in passing yards, top 20 in completions. Wide receiver Ted Hurst has 25 grabs for 434 and 5 scores. And they're facing a Marshall squad who's allowed over 32 points a game on offense in their last 5 games. When it comes to defending the run, they allow a $175 a game on the ground. That puts them 113th in that category. Now, injury-wise, Creedle and Green are questionable for Georgia State. 2 out of the Panthers' last 3 did get over the total. Meanwhile, Marshall saw overs against the likes of Appalachian State and Ohio State. Give me Georgia State plus 9, over 52. All right, next matchup, little ACC action. BC, Virginia Tech, 7:30 Thursday night. Virginia Tech is minus 7, totals 49.5. Now, Virginia Tech's 3-3 straight up, 3-3 against the point spread. Boston College 4-2 straight up, 3-3 against the number. Boston College with wins over the likes of Western Kentucky, Michigan State, Duquesne, and Florida State. Losses to Virginia and Missouri. Virginia Tech on the other side, winners against Stanford, Old Dominion, and Marshall. Losers against Vandy, Miami, and Rutgers. And Virginia Tech did cover the point spread in their last 2 straight. They are doing a nice job defending the pass. These guys allow only 14 completions a game, 21st in defensive completion percentage. Antoine Powell-Ryland leads the D in sacks, pair of fumble recoveries. And Mose Phillips has the most tackles on D. You don't hear that name much, Mose. I think of Mose from The Office, the weird Amish cousin of Dwight Schrute. Now, when it comes to offensive production, the Hokies scored 31 points or more in 4 out of their last 5 games. And they're facing a Boston College defense who really doesn't get a ton of pressure on the quarterback. These guys average just 1.8 sacks a game. Meanwhile, on the offensive side of things, they've struggled a bit throwing the football. They're completing only 14 throws a game, 195 yards per contest through the air. When it comes to protecting the quarterback, well, the Eagles are 105th in sacks allowed. Now, injury-wise, James is questionable. Broom is out. Meanwhile, for Tech, Gallo and Holloway are questionable for them. When it comes to the total, the Hokies saw unders against the likes of Stanford and Marshall. Meanwhile, BC saw the under cash in their last 4 straight. 5-1 of the under for the entire season. Give me Virginia Tech minus 7, under 49. Next matchup, Florida State, Duke, 7 o'clock Friday night. Duke's minus 3, totals 42.5. And for some reason, we saw a half a point fade of Duke in the early going here. They opened at 3.5. Duke's 5-1 straight up, 4-1 against the point spread. Wins over UNC, Middle Tennessee, UConn, Northwestern, and Elon. Their lone loss was last week to Georgia Tech. Now, Florida State on the other side, they've fallen to the likes of Clemson, SMU, Memphis, BC, and Georgia Tech this year. Their lone win was against the Cal Golden Bears. That all in mind, though, this is another bad spot for Florida State backers here. The Noles have scored 16 points or less in their last 5 straight. Bottom 10 in the country in scoring. When it comes to running the football, they're second to last in the nation in yards per game on the ground. They're running for just 58 yards per contest. And they're going to face a Duke defense who's been tough to score against this season. These guys allow only 17 points a game, top 3 in yards allowed per completion. Terry Moore has a pair of interceptions out of that secondary, 27 total tackles. And Alex Howard has 3 sacks on the season, 47 total tackles for him. And even though their offense really doesn't get talked about much, the Blue Devils have scored at least 26 points in 4 of 6 games this year. Now, injury-wise, Moore and Hasley are out for Duke. Graham, Byers, and Murphy questionable for Florida State. The Noles did see all of their games this season stay under the number except for 1. Meanwhile, Duke saw 3 out of their last 4 stay under the total themselves. Unders against the likes of Georgia Tech, North Carolina, and UConn. Give me Duke -3, under 42.5. Next game, Oregon, Purdue, 8 o'clock Friday night. Oregon's 27.5, totals 59. Saw a 1-point fade of the Ducks. They opened 28.5. Oregon, 6-0 straight up, 2-4 against the point spread. Wins against Ohio State, Michigan State, UCLA, Oregon State, and Boise. Also Idaho. Purdue, 1-5 straight up, 2-4 against the number. Losses against Illinois, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Oregon State, and Notre Dame. That one victory was against Indiana State. Now, this Purdue defense has given up 47 points a game in their last 5 outings. They're allowing 455 total yards per game. And no real surprise here, this secondary is in the bottom 5 in yards allowed per completion. Unfortunately for them, Oregon completes an NCAA best 76% of their passes. Dylan Gabriel's thrown for nearly 1,800 yards, 17 total touchdowns, only 7 sacks allowed. And when it comes to this running game, Jordan James has rushed for 667 yards and 6 scores. But even if the offense struggles, this Oregon D has definitely been tough to move the sticks against. They're in the top 20 in defensive quarterback rating. Now, injury-wise, Terrell's questionable for Oregon. Smith and Green are out for Purdue. When it comes to the total, the Ducks could potentially put this one over themselves. They saw 3 out of their last 5 get over the line. Meanwhile, Purdue went 4-1 to the over in their last 5 themselves. Give me the Oregon Ducks -27.5, over 59. Next contest, Oklahoma State, BYU, 10:15 East. BYU's -10, totals 56. 2-point move toward the Cougars, opened 8, up to 10. BYU 6-0 straight up, perfect against the point spread, absolute cash cow. Oklahoma State 3-3 straight up, 2-4 against the number. The Cowboys are currently on a 3-game skid. Losses to the likes of West Virginia, K-State, and Utah. And when it comes to running the football, these guys are one of the worst in the country to do it. They're gaining only 93 yards a game on the ground. That puts them in the bottom 10 in the country in that category. You know, that's a lot of pressure for a quarterback room who's completing only 58% of their throws. And, you know, if you think they're having problems on offense, well, listen, this defense has been porous at best. They're in the bottom 5 in total yards per game allowed. And they're facing a BYU team who averages over 34 points a game and does a nice job protecting the quarterback. Now, defensively, you just can't throw it on these guys. Their secondary is limiting their competition to just 51% passing. Top 5 in the country in that category. Jacob Robinson has a pair of interceptions out of that secondary. 22 tackles on the year. And Harrison Taggart leads the day in tackles with 34 of them. Now, injury-wise, Rapati, Martin, and Brown are out. Meanwhile, for Oklahoma State, Springfield and Wright are questionable. 3 out of the Cowboys' last 4 ball games stayed under the total. BYU saw unders against the likes of Kansas State and SMU. Give me BYU -10, under 56. Next game, Fresno State taking on Nevada, 10:30 p.m. East. That's also on Friday night. Fresno's -2, total 51.5. 1 point fade of the Bulldogs opened at 3. Fresno 3-3 straight up, 3-3 against the point spread. Nevada 3-4 straight up, 5-2 against the number. Nevada with wins against Oregon State, Eastern Washington, and Troy. Losses against San Jose State, Minnesota, Georgia Southern, and SMU. Fresno currently on a 2-game skid themselves. Losses to Wazoo and UNLV. They also dropped that opener to Michigan. Now, they did beat the likes of New Mexico State, and Sacramento State. And believe it or not, Fresno State is doing a nice job throwing the football. 32nd in the country in passing yards, top 25 in completions. Mikey Keene's thrown for nearly 1,600 yards. Magdalena with 562 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. And even though not many folks talk about this defense, well, the Bulldogs have a pretty good secondary. They're 12th in the country in yards allowed per pass attempt. And they're facing a Nevada team who really doesn't throw it all too well themselves. They're gaining just $174 a game through the air. Bottom 20 in yards per completion. And when it comes to defensive play, well, the Wolfpack just haven't been, good enough getting pressure on the quarterback. They've averaged less than 1.1 sacks per game. Now, injury-wise, Johnson and Purdy are questionable for Nevada. Tarwater and Greer questionable for Fresno. When it comes to the total, Fresno did see overs in 3 out of their last 5. Meanwhile, Nevada saw overs in their last 3 straight. Fresno State -2, over 51.5. All right, next matchup. Going into the Saturday slate, little ACC action. Virginia at Clemson, 12 o'clock East. Clemson's -21, totals 57. 1 point move toward the Tigers. Clemson's 5-1 straight up, 4-2 against the point spread. Actually, winners of their last 5 straight, red hot right now. They beat up on Appalachian State, NC State, Stanford, Florida State, and Wake Forest. Only loss was to Georgia in the opener. Virginia's 4-2 straight up, 4-2 against the point spread. Losses to Louisville and Maryland. Wins against BC, Coastal, Wake Forest, and Richmond. I do have concerns for Virginia, traveling here. I know this is a big number for a conference game, but, listen, exactly that. It's an ACC game away from Charlottesville. And I have concerns about them defensively. They're allowing 21 completed passes a game, 115th in passing yards. And, I'll admit it. Listen, I have not been all too kind to Cade Klubnik, especially earlier in the year. But you know what? The kid's getting the job done. He is really taking control of this offense. Clemson is 11th in total yards, top 25 in completions. And I'll tell you what, when these guys run the football, you're in trouble. They're 8th in yards per rush on the ground. Phil Maffa averages 6.9 yards per rush, 604 total yards on the ground for him. And when it comes to defensive play, the Tigers allow just 54% of their throws to be completed. Now, Brown and Green are questionable. McLeod is out. Meanwhile, for Virginia, Robinson, Wilson, and Boley are questionable. Metcalf out for them. Virginia saw overs against the likes of Coastal and Wake Forest. Meanwhile, Clemson saw overs in 2 out of their last 4, throwing out that Florida State game. Give me Clemson -21, over 57. Next matchup, more ACC action. Miami, Louisville, 12 o'clock East. Miami's -3 away from home, total 61. 1.5 point fade of the Hurricanes, open 4.5. Miami 6-0 straight up, 3-3 against the point spread. Cal, Virginia Tech, South Florida, Ball State, Florida A&M, and Florida, all victims to the Canes. Louisville 4-2 straight up, 3-3 against the point spread. Losers against SMU and Notre Dame. Winners against Virginia, Georgia Tech, Jacksonville State, and Austin Peay. And even though there's really not much to nitpick about when it comes to Louisville, their secondary is allowing opposing quarterbacks to complete over 65% of their throws against them. And that's definitely bad news for Louisville fans. Miami's currently leading the country in total yards per game. Quarterback Cam Ward, he's thrown for over 2,200 yards already and 20 touchdowns. Meanwhile, wideout Xavier Restrepo, he has 32 grabs for 585 and a handful of scores. But if you think it's just all offense for the U, well, you may want to think again. This Hurricane defense is 9th in sacks, 7th in interceptions. Now, injury-wise, Taylor's questionable for the U, Chaney questionable for Louisville. The Cards did see overs in 4 out of their last 6. Miami saw overs in all of their contests this year through 6 games. Give me Miami -3 over 61. Next game, Wisconsin, Northwestern, 12 o'clock East. Wisconsin 6.5, totals 41. Half a point move toward Northwestern in this one. Opened at 7, down to 6.5. Northwestern 3-3 straight up, 2-4 against the point spread. Wisconsin 4-2 straight up, 2-4 against the number. The Badgers with wins against Rutgers, Purdue, South Dakota, and Western Michigan. Losses to USC and Alabama. Northwestern wins over Maryland, Miami, Ohio, and Eastern Illinois. Losses to Indy, Washington, and Duke. Now, Northwestern has big problems up front. They can't move the football, and they have a tough time throwing it. Wildcats are completing under 56% of their throws, bottom 10 in quarterback rating. And if you think they can rely on their defense, well, listen, this has been one of the worst secondaries in the Big Ten. Northwestern actually ranks 114th in passing defense. They're facing a Wisconsin team who protects the quarterback and does not commit penalties. When it comes to running the football, these guys are gaining nearly 200 yards a game on the ground. Walker averages 5.4 yards a carry. Yakimelli, 8.8 yards per tote. Meanwhile, on the defensive side, Wisconsin allows just $168 a game through the air. That puts them in the top 20 in passing defense. Now, injury-wise, Van Dyke and Nelson are questionable for Wisconsin. Griffin and Thompson are out. Meanwhile, for Northwestern, Cameron and Saka are questionable for them. Northwestern saw 2 out of their last 3 stay under the total, throwing out that Maryland game. Meanwhile, Wisconsin saw unders this year against the likes of South Dakota and Western Michigan. Give me Wisconsin -6.5, under 41. Next game, Big Ten, Nebraska, Indiana, 12 o'clock East. Indy's -6, totals 50.5. 2-point move toward the Hoosiers in this one. Indy 6-0 straight up, 5-1 against the point spread. Nebraska 5-1 straight up, 5-1 against the number. Nebraska beat Rutgers, Purdue, Northern Iowa, Colorado, and UTEP. Their lone loss was a 1-score game against Illinois. Indiana undefeated on this season. They beat up on Northwestern, Maryland, Charlotte, UCLA, Western Illinois, and Florida International. They covered the point spread in their last 5 straight. Absolute covering machines right now. And this Indy defense has been, well, quite impressive. They allow only 14 points a game, 7th in the nation in total yards allowed. Mikael Kamara leads the D in sacks. Aiden Fisher has the most tackles. But it ain't just defense in Indy. The Hoosiers are lighting up the scoreboard on offense. They're averaging 48 points a game, 6th in the country in total yards. And they're facing a Nebraska team who failed to cover in 2 out of their last 3 themselves. Failures to cover against the likes of Rutgers and Illinois. And even though there's really not a ton to nitpick about, I can't imagine the Cornhuskers are going to jam it down their throats. They are 90th in rushing yards per game. Now, the Cornhuskers did see all of their contests this season stay under the total except for one. Indy saw the under cash against Florida International. Give me the Hoosiers -6, under 50.5. Next matchup, Louisiana taking on Coastal. That'll be a 12 o'clock Eastern start. Louisiana, -3, total 56. Half a point move toward Coastal Carolina in this one. Open 3.5. The Chants are 4-2 straight up, 3-3 against the point spread. Louisiana 5-1 straight up, 2-4 against the number. The Cajuns beat up on Appalachian State, Southern Miss, Wake Forest, Kennesaw State, and Grambling. Their lone loss was to Tulane. Coastal lost to JMU in Virginia this year. Wins against Old Dominion, Temple, William and Mary, and Jacksonville State. And even though the Chanticleers are at home here, I just kind of don't really trust their defense. These guys have allowed 37 points or more in their last 3 straight. They're also allowing 200 yards a game on the ground. They're 119th in rushing defense. And unfortunately for them, the Cajuns on the other side like to ground and pound. They're in the top 25 in yards per rush. As a matter of fact, their top 3 rushers are averaging over 6.1 yards per carry. Now, when it comes to protecting the quarterback, the Cajuns are allowing under 1.1 sacks per game. Meanwhile, on the defensive side, well, they've been just as impressive, if not better. They're 9th in yards per completion, top 25 in total yards allowed. When it comes to the total, the Cajuns saw 2 out of their last 3 get over the total, throwing out that Appalachian State game. Meanwhile, Coastal is 4-2 to the over for the entire season. Give me Louisiana -3, over 56. Next game, Big Ten, UCLA at Rutgers, 12 o'clock East. Rutgers is -4, totals 40.5. We saw a 4-point move toward the Bruins in the early wagering here. Opened up at 8, all the way down to 4. And UCLA, 1-5 straight up, 3-3 against the point spread. Rutgers, 4-2 straight up, 4-2 against the number. The Scarlet Knights garnered wins against the likes of Washington, Virginia Tech, Akron, and Howard. Back-to-back losses to Wisconsin and Nebraska. Now, UCLA losers of their last 5 straight. Minnesota, Penn State, Oregon, LSU, and Indiana. Lone victory was a 3-point nail-biter against Hawaii. And unfortunately for UCLA, I just don't think they're doing enough on offense to get the job done here. They're 130th in total yards per game, bottom 3 in rushing. Now, scoring-wise, the Bruins are averaging fewer points per game than any other school besides one. And they're facing a Rutgers team who does play a physical brand of defense. These guys have given up 23 points or less in all of their games except for one. And I'll tell you what, this secondary has definitely made it tough for opposing quarterbacks to throw it. They're in the top 10 in defensive quarterback rating. Shaquan Loyals has a pair of interceptions out of that secondary. Daryl Jabome leads the program in tackles. And as bad as the Scarlet Knights have been on offense, well, they're actually one of the more disciplined, lesser penalized groups in college football. They're actually 5th in the nation in fewest offensive penalties. Now, 2 out of Rutgers' last 3 ball games did stay under the total. UCLA saw all of their games this season stay under the line except for one. Give me Rutgers -4, under 40.5. Next game, East Carolina taking on Army, 12 o'clock East. Army's -15, totals 51.5. Army 6-0 straight up, perfect against the point spread. East Carolina 3-3 straight up, 3-3 against the number. ECU losers of 3 out of their last 4. Charlotte, Liberty, and Appy State beat them. Now their 3 wins came from Texas San Antonio, Old Dominion, and Norfolk. Meanwhile, Army beat up on UAB, Tulsa, Temple, Rice, FAU, and Lehigh this season. Once again, covered the number in all of those victories. And I do think we'll see more of the same here this Saturday. So Army defense allows just 9 points a game. Second least penalized defense in college football. They can also defend both the run and the pass. They allow only 78 yards a game on the ground. Top 3 in fewest yards allowed per completion. And then Thomas leads the program in tackles. Larkin and Mays with multiple interceptions. When it comes to offensive production, you know what you're getting. The Black Knights want to run the football. They want to run it all the time. They're gaining an NCAA best 370 yards a game on the ground. And unfortunately for ECU, they once again dropped 3 out of their last 4. And They gave up a whole lot of points during that time frame. And I'll tell you what, this is the most heavily penalized defense in college football. They're averaging double-digit, penalties a game on D. Now, total-wise, ECU saw 2 out of their last 3 get over the total. Overs against the likes of Charlotte and Liberty. Meanwhile, Army saw all of their games this year get over the total themselves. Give me Army minus 15, over 51.5. Next matchup, SEC, Auburn, Missouri, 12 o'clock East. Missouri, minus 4.5, total 52. We saw a 3-point move toward Auburn in this one. Opened at 7.5, down to 4.5. Auburn 2-4 straight up, 3-3 against the point spread. Missouri 5-1 straight up, 3-3 against the number. Missouri beat the likes of UMass, Vandy, BC, Buffalo, and Murray State. Lone loss was to A&M. Auburn on the other side, currently on a 3-game skid. Georgia, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. The other loss was to Cal. And there were only 2 wins. Well, that was against New Mexico and Alabama A&M. And I really don't like Auburn in this particular spot here as well. Conference game on the road, not playing great football at the moment. And I'll tell you what, when I just talked about ECU's defense being the most heavily penalized in college football, well, the second most heavily penalized defense, that's Auburn. They're committing 9.2 infractions per game just on defense alone. Once again, that is second worst in college football. And they're facing a crisp Missouri offense who doesn't turn it over much. They're in the top 10 in fewest turnovers. They've thrown only 1 interception all season. And speaking of throwing the football, they're in the top 25 in completion percentage. Theo Weiss and Luther Burden, they have over 800 yards receiving between the both of them. When it comes to defensive play, Missouri's got a top 10 passing defense. They allow just $154 a game through the air. Now, injury-wise, Wayne is questionable with a hammy. Horn is out. Meanwhile, for Auburn, Coleman, Miller, and McPherson are questionable for them. Beatty's still out as well. Auburn did see 3 out of their last 5 stay under the total. Meanwhile, Missouri saw unders against the likes of UMass, Boston College, and Buffalo. Give me Missouri minus 4.5, under 52. Next game, Arizona State taking on Cincinnati, 12 o'clock Eastern start. Cincinnati's minus 3.5, totals 53 and a hook. Half a point move towards Cincy in this one, opened at 3. The Bearcats are 4-2 straight up, 3-3 against the point spread. Arizona State 5-1 straight up, 5-1 against the number. The Sun Devils beat Utah, Kansas, Texas State, Mississippi State, and Wyoming. Only loss was to Texas Tech in Lubbock. Meanwhile, Cincy lost to Texas Tech in Lubbock as well, gave up 44 points in that game. Also lost to Pitt. Now their wins came against UCF, Houston, Miami, Ohio, and Towson. And I actually do think this Cincy defense is in a bit of trouble. They're 114th in yards allowed per play from scrimmage. When it comes to defending the pass, they are 107th in yards allowed per completion. But I'll tell you what, it ain't just offensive woes for Cincy. These guys have put the ball on the turf an awful lot. They're in the bottom 15 in fumbles, 105th in fourth quarter scoring. And they're facing a Sun Devil defense who's 8th in the country in fumbles. Nice job with punching that ball out. They're also a top 25 rushing defense. But the real strength of this ASU program this year has been their run game. These guys grind out over 211 yards a game on the ground. Cam Scatterbo, 773 yards already, 8 touchdowns. And when quarterback Sam Levitt takes off and runs, he's gaining 5.1 yards per rush. Now, injury-wise, Naya and Dorba are questionable. Romney's still out. Meanwhile, for Cincy, Coleman's still out for them. And once again, when it comes to the point spread, ASU covered in all of their ball games this year except for one. I'll tell you, a great covering team, catching 3.5, feels like a solid spot here. Now, 3 out of the Sun Devils' last 4 did get over the total. Cincinnati saw overs against the likes of Texas Tech and Towson. Give me Arizona State plus 3.5, over 53 and a hook. Next game, Wake Forest, UConn, 12 o'clock East. UConn's minus 2.5, totals 58. We saw a 1-point move toward the Huskies, open 1.5. UConn 4-2 straight up, 4-2 against the point spread. Wake Forest 2-4 straight up, 2-4 against the number. The Deacs lost to Clemson, Cajuns, Ole Miss, and Virginia. They did beat NC State and NCAA. Now, UConn's on a 3-game heater themselves. Victories over Temple, Buffalo, and Florida Atlantic. They also got a dub earlier this year against Merrimack. Now, they did lose this season to Duke and Maryland, and I do think they might be a bit overmatched in this spot here. Their one-dimensional offense makes them completely reliant on the run, and when they actually do throw it, they're completing under 56% of their throws. Now, total-wise, UConn did see all of their ball games this year get over the total except for one. Wake Forest is 4-2 the over for the entire year themselves. Give me Wake Forest plus 2.5, over 58. Next game, South Carolina, Oklahoma, 12:45 East. Oklahoma's minus 3, totals 41. Half a point move toward the Sooners. Oklahoma 4-2 straight up, 3-3 against the point spread. South Carolina 3-3 straight up, 4-2 against the number. Winners against Akron, Kentucky, Old Dominion. Losers against Bama, Ole Miss, LSU. Oklahoma on the other side beat Auburn, Tulane, Houston, and Temple. Lost to Tennessee and Texas. And this Sooner offense might be in trouble again. They're gaining only $1.65 a game through the air. Bottom 10 in yards per play from scrimmage. When it comes to protecting the quarterback, the Sooners are in the bottom 10 in sacks allowed. They're facing a South Carolina defense who can definitely get you a stop or two when you need it. They're in the top 25 in yards allowed per game. It's actually just 3.1 yards per rush they give up. And unfortunately for this OU offensive line, this Gamecocks pass rush is legit. They're 12th in sacks, 14th in interceptions. Jalen Kilgore leads the secondary in picks. Kyle Kennard's got the most sacks. When it comes to the injury list, Sellers is questionable for South Carolina. Hatchett and Hickman are out for OU. The Sooners are 4-2 to the under for the season. South Carolina saw unders against the likes of Ole Miss, Kentucky, and Old Dominion. Give me South Carolina plus 3, under 41. Next game, Tulsa, Temple, 2 o'clock East. Temple minus 3, total 53. And there's no reason Temple should be laying any type of points in any particular spot. For some reason, that line moved half a point to the Owls. Open 2.5. Temple is 1-5 straight up, 3-3 against the point spread. Tulsa 2-4 straight up, 2-4 against the number. Tulsa beat Louisiana Tech and Northwestern State. Lost to Army, North Texas, Oklahoma State, and Arkansas State. Temple lost to UConn, Army, Coastal, Navy, and Oklahoma. Their lone win was against Utah State. Now, this Owls defense allows 234 yards a game on the ground, 36 points a game they give up. Meanwhile, on offense, they are the lowest first-quarter scoring team in the nation. They're in the bottom 5 in interceptions. And they're facing a Tulsa team who allows only 17 completed balls a game. Meanwhile, on offense, they've done a solid job protecting the quarterback. They're 16th in the nation in sacks allowed per game. Now, injury-wise, Ballard and Lewis are out for Tulsa. Clark, Quarshie, Terry, Black, and Brock, hey, that's me, questionable for Temple. Total-wise, Temple saw unders against the likes of UConn, Coastal, and Oklahoma. Tulsa saw unders in 3 out of their last 5. Give me Tulsa plus 3, under 53. Next game, Maction, Directional Michigans. I'm talking about Central Michigan taking on Eastern Michigan. 2 o'clock Eastern start. Eastern's minus 2, totals 56. Half a point fade of Eastern in this one. Opened at 2.5. The Eastern Michigan Eagles are 4-2 straight up, 5-1 against the point spread. Central 3-3 straight up, 3-3 against the number. The Central Michigan Chippewas beat San Diego. San Diego State or South Dakota State. I can't read my notes. They did beat Ball State and Central Connecticut State. They lost to Ohio, Illinois, and FIU. Eastern Michigan beat Kent State, St. Francis, Jacksonville State, and UMass. Lost to Washington and Miami, Ohio. And even though they are at home here, I don't like the Eagles get the job done. Their D's allowed 30 points or more in 4 out of their last 5 games. They've also got one of the worst secondaries in the MAC. Eastern Michigan's in the bottom 5 in defensive quarterback rating. And they're facing a Central Michigan squad who gains over 406 yards a game, really likes to run the football. B.J. Harris averages 6.3 yards per carry. Marion Luke's got the most yards on the ground. When it comes to defensive play, the Chippewas are holding their opponents to just 16 completed balls a game. Now, injury-wise, Luke's does have a sore knee right now, officially listed as questionable, although they have several backs who can tote it. Now, total-wise, the Chippewas saw overs. They went 4-2 the over for the entire season. Meanwhile, Eastern Michigan saw overs in 3 out of their last 4. Give me Central Michigan +2 over 56. Next game, Rice, Tulane, 3:30 p.m. East. Tulane's -22, totals 53.5. Tulane 4-2 straight up, 5-1 against the point spread. Rice 2-4 straight up, 2-4 against the number. Rice beat up on UTSA and Texas Southern, lost to Charlotte, Army, Houston, and Sam Houston. Tulane beat UAB, South Florida, Louisiana, and Southeast Louisiana. Lost to Oklahoma and K-State. Now, Tulane has been a point-scoring machine here recently. They scored 157 total points in their last 3 games. That's over 52 points a game on average during that span. And aside from being in the top 10 in offensive quarterback rating, these guys also like to run the football. They're in the top 20 in yards per game on the ground. Mekhi Hughes has 604 yards rushing, along with 8 total touchdowns. And when it comes to defensive play, the Green Wave's doing a nice job defending the pass. They're in the top 25 in sacks, top 20 in yards allowed per throw. And they're facing a Rice team who's been little threat throwing the football efficiently. These guys are 127th in yards per completed pass. Meanwhile, on the other end of the ball, they're one of the worst teams in the conference in takeaways. Now, Tulane went 4 under the over in their last 5 outings. Rice saw 3 out of their last 5 get over the line. Give me Tulane -22, over 53.5. Next game, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, 3:30 p.m. East. Notre Dame's -12, totals 50. 4-point move to the Irish, opened at 8. Notre Dame 5-1 straight up, 4-2 against the point spread. Georgia Tech 5-2 straight up, 5-2 against the number. Georgia Tech marquee wins UNC, Duke, and Florida State. Losses to Louisville and Syracuse. Notre Dame marquees against Stanford, Louisville, and A&M. They did suffer that upset loss to Northern Illinois. But I think the Irish are a little bit overvalued in this one. They're throwing for just $184 a game. They're 122nd in yards per completion. Now, they also like to put it on the turf. They're 104th in fumbles. And they're facing a Yellow Jacket squad who's got a top 25 rushing defense. And when it comes to offensive production, well, they do things quite efficiently. They're in the top 20 in yards per rush, top 10 in completion percentage. And for those who don't know, this Yellow Jacket offense, more specifically, this Yellow Jacket offensive line, they've allowed only 1 sack all season long. That's best in the NCAA. Georgia Tech's 5-2 the under for the entire season. Notre Dame saw unders against the likes of Miami, Ohio, Texas A&M, and Northern Illinois. Give me Georgia Tech +12, under 50. Next matchup, Florida Atlantic taking on Texas San Antonio, 3:30 p.m. East. UTSA's -3, totals 55.5. UTSA 2-4 straight up, 1-5 against the number. FAU 2-4 straight up, 3-3 against the point spread. FAU beat Wagner and FIU, lost to North Texas, UConn, Army, and Michigan State. UTSA beat Houston Christian and Kennesaw State, lost to Texas State, Texas, ECU, and Rice. And as bad as UTSA has been, well, they actually do defend the run well. They allow just 95 yards a game on the ground, 6th in the country in yards per rush. Martavius French with the most tackles for the Roadrunners. Robinson with the most sacks. When it comes to offensive production, UTSA is in the top 15 in the nation in completed balls per game. They're facing an FAU squad who gets little pressure on the quarterback. They're actually in the bottom 5 in the country in sacks. They also allow 210 yards a game on the ground. Now, offensively, well, I'll tell you, not much better. Throwing for just $194 a game through the air. When it comes to the total, FAU saw 3 out of their last 4 get over the total. Meanwhile, UTSA saw overs against the likes of Rice, Texas, and Texas State. Give me UTSA -3 over 55.5. Next game, Michigan, Illinois, 3:30 p.m. East. Michigan's -3 away from home, total 43.5. Half a point move toward the Wolverines in this one, open 2.5. Michigan 4-2 straight up, 1-5 against the point spread. Illinois 5-1 straight up, 5-1 against the number. Illinois beat Purdue, Nebraska, Central Michigan, Kansas, and Eastern Illinois. Only loss was to Penn State. Michigan losers to Washington and Texas. They did beat Minnesota, USC, Arkansas State, and Fresno. Now, I do think the Wolverines will have trouble moving the football in this one. They're throwing for just $115 a game, 119th in total passing yards. And no real surprise, Michigan's currently dead last in yards per completion. And as good as they've been at times on D, their secondary has definitely let them down in spots. They're 130th in completions allowed, 114th in yards allowed through the air. And for some reason, this Michigan D tends to break down late. They're in the bottom 10 in fourth quarter points allowed. They're facing an Illinois squad who's efficient on offense. They're in the top 15 in quarterback rating. And when it comes to running the football, they're averaging nearly 200 yards a game on the ground. The Illini's 4-2 to the under for the season. Michigan saw unders against the likes of Arkansas State and Fresno. Give me Illinois +3, under 44. Next game, more action. Toledo, NIU, 3:30 East. Northern Illinois -2.5, total 43. 1 point move toward the Huskies in this one. NIU 4-2 straight up, 5-1 against the point spread. Toledo 4-2 straight up, 3-3 against the number. Toledo beat Miami, Ohio, Mississippi State, UMass, and Duquesne. Lost to Buffalo and Western Kentucky. NIU beat Bowling Green, UMass, Notre Dame, and Western Illinois. Lost to NC State and Buffalo. Now, Toledo's had a hard time getting the job done on the ground. 112th in rushing. And they're facing a tough NIU defense who allows only 97 yards a game on the ground. They're 7th in the country in total yards allowed. Roy Williams and Nevaeh Sanders have 9 sacks between the both of them. Jaden Dolphin leads the defense in tackles. And when it comes to running the football, this Husky offense is gaining over 220 yards a game on the ground. Now, total-wise, NIU saw unders in 4 out of their last 5. Unders against the likes of Bowling Green, NC State, and Buffalo. Give me Northern Illinois -2.5, under 43. Next contest, UAB, USF, 3:30 p.m. East. South Florida's -14, totals 58. Half a point move toward the Battling Bulls of USF. Now, South Florida is 2-4 straight up, 3-3 against the point spread. UAB 1-5 straight up, 2-4 against the number. UAB with a win against Alcorn in their opener. South Florida with wins against Southern Miss and Bethune-Cookman. The Bulls are currently on a 3-game losing streak. Their defense has been awful. They're currently in the bottom 10 in yards allowed per pass attempt. And they're facing a UAB squad who doesn't give up a whole lot of yards through the air. As a matter of fact, they're giving up just $135 a game passing. They're also allowing just 9 completed balls a game. That's best in Division I. Now, listen, that is a bit of a skewed stat. You know, they did play Army and Navy this year, who rarely passes. Plus, their rushing defense has been so poor that teams really haven't had to pass against them. That said, though, Michael Moore leads that D in tackles. Cyrod Bryant, he's got 36 tackles on the year. Now, total-wise, USF saw unders against the likes of Army, UL Monroe, and Alcorn. Meanwhile, USF saw unders in all of their contests except for one. Give me UAB plus 14, under 58. Next game, Hawaii, Washington State, 3:30 p.m. East. Wazoo's minus 19, totals 55. Half a point fade of the Cougs, open 19.5. Wazoo 5-1 straight up, 4-2 against the point spread. Hawaii 2-4 straight up, 2-4 against the number. Hawaii beat Northern Iowa and Delaware State. Wazoo beat Fresno, San Jose State, Washington, Texas Tech, and Portland State. Now, Wazoo is for some reason having problems slowing down the passing game. They're in the bottom 5 in completions allowed, bottom 10 in defensive passing, and they're facing a Hawaii team who exclusively throws the football. These guys are 19th in the nation in completed throws a game. Give me Hawaii plus 19, over 55. Next game, NC State, Cal, 3:30 p.m. East. Cal's 10.5, totals 46 and a hook. Cal 3-3 straight up, 4-2 against the number. NC State 3-4 straight up, and they've yet to cover a point spread. Well, I think that's going to change this week. Cal's had some serious problems on defense. They're 102nd in yards allowed per play. They're also on a 3-game skid, and they rush for only 3.3 yards per tote on the ground. Give me NC State plus 10.5, under 46 and a hook. Next game, Texas State, Old Dominion, 3:30 p.m. East. Texas State is minus 9.5 away from home, total 62.5. Texas State, winners of their last 2 straight, scoring a shit ton of points this season. The Bobcats have scored 34 points or more in all of their ball games except for one. They're facing an Old Dominion defense who's 108th in total yards allowed. Texas State minus 9.5, over 62 and a hook. Next game, Charlotte, Navy, 3:30 p.m. East. Navy minus 17, total 55. Navy's 5-0 straight up, 4-1 against the number. Aside from being a top 3 running team, the midshipmen have certainly made it count in the rare instance they pass. They're actually averaging more yards per completion than any other team in college football. And they're facing a shaky Charlotte defense who doesn't defend the run well. That's bad news for them. They're 117th in yards allowed per rush. And like I said, this is arguably the best running team in football. Give me Navy minus 17, over 55. Next game, Houston, Kansas, 3:30 p.m. East. Kansas is minus 7, totals 47. Kansas is 1-5 straight up, winless against the point spread. And I think they're about to go 0-7 against the number this week after this one. They're completing only 55% of their passes, 117th in quarterback rating. Meanwhile, this tough Houston team has a top 20 passing defense. Not a good formula for Kansas. Give me Houston plus 7, under 47. Next game, Kent State. The Golden Flashes taking on Bowling Green, 3:30 Eastern start. Bowling Green minus 21, total 56. Now, BG did fail to cover in their last 3 straight, 113th in rushing defense. As bad as Kent State has been, well, they do make the big plays count. They are 9th in the nation in yards per completion. Now, Kent State did see unders against the likes of Penn State and St. Francis. Meanwhile, BG saw unders in 3 out of their last 4. Give me Kent State plus 21, under 56. Next matchup, Alabama, Tennessee, 3:30 p.m. East. Bama's minus 3, totals 55.5. Now, Bama did see overs in all of their ball games this year except for one. Tennessee saw overs against the likes of Kent State, NC State, and Chattanooga. And if you want to see who I'm picking to cover the spread, this game is being featured as one of my college football tier package picks for college football week 8. But as far as making a free play is concerned, give me the over 55.5. Next matchup, Western Michigan taking on Buffalo, 3:30 p.m. East. Western Michigan's minus 1.5, totals 49 and a hook. Now, Western Michigan failed to cover in 4 out of their last 5. 35 points a game they're giving up for the entire season. And when it comes to offensive production, they're 110th in passing. And this Buffalo defense, they do play the pass well at times. They're 8th in yards allowed per completion. Give me Buffalo plus 1.5, under 49 and a hook. Next game, more action. Ohio taking on Miami, Ohio, 3:30 p.m. East. Miami's -4, totals 44. Now, Miami's just 2-4 straight up, 2-4 against the point spread. And the Red Hawks have had all kinds of issues on offense. 56% passing, 99 yards a game on the ground. They're facing a tough Ohio team who's got a top 35 rushing defense. Give me Ohio plus 4, under 44. Next game, Baylor, Texas Tech, 4 o'clock East. Texas Tech is -7, totals 57. Now, the Red Raiders did fail to cover this year against Cincinnati, Wazoo, and Abilene Christian. And when it comes to defensive play, they've been awful slowing down the pass. They allow 308 yards a game through the air. That's bottom 3 in Division I. Secondary really struggling, not a great pass rush. And they're facing a tough Baylor secondary who allows just 13 completed balls a game. That puts them in the top 10 in that category. Give me Baylor plus 7, under 57. Next matchup, Big Ten, USC, Maryland, 4 o'clock East. USC's -8 on the road, totals 56. Now, USC's on a 2-game losing streak, also dropped 3 out of their last 4. And the Trojans are definitely having some problems on defense. Their secondary's in the bottom 10 in completion percentage. When it comes to slowing down the run, they're 103rd in yards allowed per rush. And they're facing a Maryland offense who completes over 27 balls a game. They're 13th in passing yards. As a matter of fact, the Terps are averaging over 303 yards a game through the air. Give me Maryland plus 8, over 56. Next game, Wyoming, San Jose State, 4 o'clock East. San Jose State's -11.5, totals 50 and a hook. Now, San Jose State's 4-2 straight up, 4-2 against the point spread. And when it comes to offensive production, these guys are one of the best throwing teams in the game. They're throwing for 332 yards per contest, 7th in the nation in that category. And unfortunately for Wyoming, their secondary has allowed big chunk plays. They're 117th in yards allowed per completion. Give me San Jose State -11.5, over 50 and a hook. Next game, Colorado, Arizona, 4 o'clock East. Arizona's -4, totals 55.5. And despite being favored in this one, the Wildcats have been one of the worst covering teams in college football. They failed to cover in all of their contests this season except for one. And they're facing a Buffs team who throws for over 336 yards a game. That's 8th in the country. Give me Colorado plus 4, over 55.5. Next game, New Mexico, Utah State, 4 o'clock East. New Mexico's -3, total 78. The Lobos have lost 4 of 6 this year, one of the worst defenses in college football. They're allowing 43 points a game, bottom 3 in yards allowed per contest. And they're facing an explosive Utah State offense who throws for 303 yards a game themselves, top 20 in total yards. Give me Utah State plus 3, over 78. Next game, James Madison, Georgia Southern, 4 o'clock East. JMU's -9.5, totals 58. The Dukes are 5-1 straight up, 4-2 against the point spread. They're averaging nearly 40 points a game, and they rank 16th in yards per completion. And they're facing a Georgia Southern defense who's in the bottom 3 in yards allowed per play. Give me JMU -9.5, over 58. Next matchup, SEC. Texas A&M taking on Mississippi State, 4:15 East. A&M's -14, totals 56. A&M's on a 5-game winning streak. Victories against the likes of Missouri, Arkansas, and Florida during that stretch. And this is an Aggie offensive line who loves to run the football. These guys are 9th in the country in yards per game on the ground. And they're facing a porous Mississippi State defense who allows 202 yards a game on the ground themselves. When it comes to defending the pass, the Bulldogs are letting their opponents complete over 74% of their throws against them. That's worse than college football. Give me A&M minus 14 over 56. All right, guys, give me a few minutes. I got to stretch my legs. All right, sorry about that, guys. I appreciate you let me take some time there to stretch out my legs. I've been sitting in the same spot for an hour. All right, we just did A&M. Okay, next game, LSU, Arkansas, 7 o'clock East. LSU minus 3.5, total 54 and a hook. LSU failed to cover in 4 out of their last 6. Arkansas covered in all of their games except for one. The Razorbacks are in the top 10 in yards per game. Give me Arkansas plus 3.5 over 54 and a hook. Next game, Arkansas State, Southern Miss, 7 o'clock East. Arkansas State minus 7, totals 55. The Red Wolves did drop 3 out of their last 4. Only 2 successful covers all season. The big problem for Arkansas State has been defense. They're allowing nearly 7.1 yards per play from scrimmage, and they're facing a Southern Miss team who doesn't really throw for a ton, but when they do throw it for big yardage. They're in the top 25 in yards per completion. When it comes to the total, the Golden Eagles are 4-2 to the under for the entire season. Arkansas State saw unders in 4 out of their last 5 themselves. Give me Southern Miss plus 7, under 55. Next game, Ball State, Vandy, 7 o'clock East. Vanderbilt minus 26, total 59. And we ain't fading Vandy just yet. These guys have been absolute covering machines. They successfully covered in all of their games this year except for one. And when it comes to offensive production, these guys are 12th in the country in quarterback rating. Very efficient with the ball in their hands. They're facing a Ball State team who's dead last in defensive quarterback rating themselves. They're also allowing more yards per pass attempt than any other school. Now, total-wise, both teams with their fair share of struggles on offense. Not going to deny that. But I'm not sure Ball State can do enough on offense to help put this one over. So we're going to go ahead and take Vandy minus 26, under 59. Kind of a tight window there. All right, next game, UCF, Iowa State, 7:30 East. Iowa State's minus 13.5, totals 49. The undefeated Cyclones are 6-0 straight up on the season, covered the number in all of those contests except for one. When it comes to passing defense, there's really not many out there who are better. They're allowing just $145 through the air, 11 total points a game. In Central Florida, on the other side, they're completing only 14 throws a game, 116th in sacks allowed. Give me Iowa State minus 13.5, under 49. Next matchup, North Texas, Memphis, 7:30 p.m. East. Memphis is minus 10, total 66.5. And I'll tell you, for a team laying double digits in this spot here, the Tigers did fail to cover in 2 out of their last 3. And they're facing a North Texas offense who loves to throw the football. They're throwing for 347 a game, top 5 in the country in total yards per contest. Give me North Texas plus 10 over 66.5. Next game, Georgia, Texas, 7:30 East. Texas is minus 3, totals 56. The Longhorns saw overs in 3 out of their last 5. Overs against the likes of UL Monroe, Texas San Antonio, and Michigan. Meanwhile, Georgia saw overs in 2 out of their last 3 themselves, Mississippi State and Bama. And if you want to see who I'm picking on the side in this one, this game is being featured as one of my college football tier package picks on my premium page. But as far as making a free play is concerned, give me the over 56. Next game, K-State, West Virginia, 7:30 East. Kansas State's minus 2.5 away from home, totals 54 and a hook. K-State's 5-1 on the year. Lone loss was to BYU. And what the Wildcats are doing well, yeah, you guessed it, running the football. It's what they always do well. They're 3rd in the nation in yards per rush. And they're facing a shaky West Virginia defense who's allowed 28 points or more in 3 out of their last 4. And I'll tell you what, this Mountaineer secondary pretty much stinks. In the bottom 3 in the nation in yards allowed per completion. Give me Kansas State minus 2.5 over 54 and a hook. Next game, Iowa, Michigan State, 7:30 East. Iowa's minus 6, totals 41. Iowa failed to cover in 3 out of their last 5. Laying points on the road in a Big Ten showdown is tough, especially when you're no threat throwing the football. They're in the bottom 3 in yards per completion, and they're facing a Michigan State team who allows just 21 points a game themselves. They rank in the top 35 in sacks. Give me Sparty plus 6, under 41. Next matchup, SEC, Kentucky, Florida, 7:45 East. Florida's minus 3, totals 43. The Gators did lose 2 out of their last 4, Tennessee and A&M. And they're facing a Kentucky squad who's tough to move the chains against. They're 9th in the country in points allowed, 5th in total yards allowed. Give me Kentucky plus 3, under 43. Next game, Colorado State, Air Force, 8 o'clock East. Colorado State's minus 8, totals 47. Now the Rams are throwing for just $191 a game, 113th in yards per completion. And they're facing an Air Force team who's got a top 30 passing defense. Give me Air Force plus 8, under 47. Next matchup, SMU, Stanford, 8 o'clock East. SMU minus 14, total 54.5. SMU 5-1 straight up, 4-2 against the point spread. The Mustangs are a top 25 running team on offense. Meanwhile, Stanford gives up a bunch of yards on D. They're allowing nearly 6.3 yards per play from scrimmage. Give me SMU minus 14 over 54.5. Next game, UNLV, Oregon State, 10 o'clock East. UNLV's minus 8 away from home, total 61. Now, the one-dimensional Rebels have been inefficient throwing the football. They're completing only 11 throws a game, bottom 10 in that category. And they're facing an Oregon State secondary. Excuse me. They're facing an Oregon State secondary who's in the top 20 in yards per game through the air. Now, total-wise, the Beavs' last 4 straight did get over the total. UNLV saw 4 out of their last 5 get over the line themselves. Give me Oregon State plus 8 over 61. Next game, TCU, Utah, 10:30 p.m. East. Utah's -4, totals 49. Utah failed to cover in 4 out of their last 5. TCU's in the top 5 in passing yards. Now, the Horned Frogs did see unders against the likes of Houston and Long Island. Meanwhile, Utah saw the under cash in all of their games except for one. Give me TCU plus 4, under 49. And thank God that was our last breakdown for the video. But we're not done yet. We are going to dive into our quick pick recap. I like South Alabama -12.5 over 56 and a hook. Kennesaw State plus 10 over 51. We're hitting at 62% our last 30 college football tier package picks on my premium site. We're also 5-0 with a push in our last 6 NFL tier package plays. Louisiana Tech -10.5 under 50 and a hook. Sam Houston -3.5 over 56. Florida International -5.5 over 49. Georgia State plus 9 over 52. Virginia Tech -7 under 49. Duke -3 under 42.5. Oregon Ducks -27.5 over 59. BYU -10 under 56. Fresno -2 over 51.5. Clemson -21 over 57. Miami Hurricanes -3 over 61. Wisconsin -6.5 under 41. Indiana Hoosiers -6 under 50.5. Louisiana Raging Cajuns -3 over 56. Rutgers -6 under 40.5. Army -15 over 51 and a hook. Missouri -4.5 under 52. Arizona State plus 3.5 over 53 and a hook. Wake Forest plus 2.5 over 58. South Carolina plus 3 under 41. Tulsa plus 3 under 53. Central Michigan plus 2 over 56. Rice plus 23 under 53.5. Georgia Tech plus 12 under 50. Texas San Antonio -3 over 55.5. Illinois plus 1.5 under 44. Northern Illinois -2.5 under 43. UAB plus 14 under 58. Hawaii plus 19 over 55. NC State plus 10.5 under 46 and a hook. Texas State -9.5 over 62.5. Navy -17 over 55. Houston plus 7 under 47. Kent State Golden Flashes plus 21 under 56. I like the over 55.5 in the Bama-Tennessee game. Buffalo Bulls plus 1.5 under 49 and a hook. Ohio Bobcats plus 4 under 44. Baylor plus 7 under 57. Maryland plus 8 over 56. San Jose State -11.5 over 50 and a hook. Colorado Buffaloes plus 4 over 55.5. Utah State plus 3 over 78. James Madison -9.5 over 58 points. Texas A&M -14 over 56. Arkansas plus 3.5 over 54 and a hook. Southern Miss plus 7 under 55. Vanderbilt -26 under 59. Iowa State -13.5 under 49. North Texas plus 10 over 66.5. I like the over 56 in the Georgia-Texas game. Kansas State -2.5 over 54 and a hook. Michigan State plus 6 under 41. Kentucky plus 3 under 43. Air Force plus 8 under 47. SMU -14 over 54.5. Oregon State plus 8 over 61. And give me TCU plus 4 under 49. And with that, folks, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on my premium site. Now, if you do end up getting a membership here today on my premium page, just a friendly reminder, you're going to get access to that membership every single day for the next 30 days. And as an added bonus, you're also going to get access to all of my cheaper memberships during that time frame absolutely free. They're going to be included with your membership. And that's why I always tell folks, that Gold Club membership, it's a full access, all-inclusive package. Gives you access to every single premium selection of mine, every single package, every single day for the next 30 days. And as an added bonus, you also get access to my exclusive Gold Club video each and every day during that time frame, absolutely free. It's included with your membership. But most importantly, folks, got to thank you for joining me right here on the free video. Really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, folks, happy Tuesday to you. Happy week 8 to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my premium site.